The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. This is Lori Fox. I am the chair of SIGUCCS, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our June webinar. If you're like me, you have to double check the calendar to really firmly believe that we are in June, but here we are. Just a little bit of housekeeping about the webinar. Everyone is muted by default. The session is being recorded and it will be available. Usually I do it next week, but I'm traveling next week, so I will probably pop it on YouTube tomorrow. If you would like to chat, you can use the chat window. You can also ask a question in the questions window. You should see both of those. But for now, if everyone could please raise your hand so I know you're listening. Nice job, Alan. And Sarah and Stacy and Susan. Okay. Hi, Tom Wilk. So I see lots of people there. All right, I'm going to put your hands down. Registration is open for the SIGUCCS annual conference that's coming up in New Orleans in November. You also can make your hotel reservations, and there is more and more information on the website. I believe that the session abstracts are coming pretty soon, and I'm excited to be in New Orleans in November, so you can start to plan your trip. Our June book for the SIGUCCS book club is QBQ, The Question Behind the Question. It is a nice, quick, light read. I actually have already finished it for the month, which is pretty fast for me. They are short chapters with little essays or stories. The discussion begins in our Slack channel the last full week of the month, which is June 24th. And there will also be a GoToMeeting hangout. Our July book, actually our July, August, and September books have all been picked, and they're available on the SIGUCCS website. So if you want to plan ahead and join us for a future month, you're absolutely welcome to join us. You still have a few more weeks to submit your award nominations for the Penny Crane Award for Distinguished Service or the Hall of Fame Awards. And we have 3 more webinars left in our 2019 series. At the end of July, we'll be talking about developing a culture of care. In September, can you teach customer service? And then in October, there is a webinar that's run by our SIGUCCS 2019 committee. It says it's for conference newcomers, but really anyone is welcome if you want to find information about the conference or the venue or more about SIGUCCS. I want to remind you of the conference discounts with membership for SIGUCCS. You also can get a discount on the pre-conference seminars. There are, I believe, 4 of them being offered this year. And you can connect with SIGUCCS many different ways. There's a web page on our website that lists all of them, but we have an email listserv, Facebook community, Twitter, and we also have a great SIGUCCS Slack community. Our most popular channels are the book club channel, because obviously we use that every month to discuss our book of the month. The conference channel is a place where our authors have been talking, or if people have questions about the venue, you can ask them there. Our productivity channel has a lot of people who like to do planning and other productivity things. And then on Wednesdays, Mo Nishiyama asks a weekly challenge question. And that's fun too. Most of his questions are about careers or culture, but every once in a while he throws in something that really sparks a lot of conversation. So that's our Slack. And I'm going to change our presenter now to our panelists. And Julio and Miranda and Liz are standing by. Julio, did you catch that? Did you see that I switched to you guys? Okay.
Yeah, kind of that control panel.
Great. So you've got the control panel. So I'm going to mute myself as well, but I'm here if you guys need anything, and take it away.
Well, welcome everyone. We are very pleased that you are here to join us. I'm Miranda, Julio, and Liz. We'll get a little more into our background in our presentation on this incredibly important topic we have to discuss today, which is what cats can teach us about excellent customer service.
Meow, meow, meow.
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 So to get started, I just wanted to let you know this is our agenda. Our chairman of the board, Rufus, here wants us to be sure to set some expectations at the beginning of this presentation. So we're going to start with some introductions and backgrounds of the three of us and how we came to be subject matter experts in customer service and cats. And then we're going to do a section addressing of the cats to identify our cat archetypes. We're going to discuss cat herding best practices or client customer service tips and tricks. And then we're going to have a discussion with all of you, including some polls using Poll Everywhere. We'll get to that in a little bit, and then we'll wrap it up.
And everything today is based on our paper that we presented at last year's conference, and in our cattribution slide at the end, there is a link to that. So first, who are we? Who are the humans who are subject matter experts on cats? I'm Miranda Carney-Morris, and this is Buttercup, my cat, and I am the Director of Educational Technology at Lewis and Clark College.
I'm Julio Aston, that's my cat Luca, and I'm an educational technologist at Lewis and Clark.
And I'm Elizabeth Young, and those are my cats, George and Farley. George is the orange guy with a little mustache, and Farley, you can't see it really well in this picture, but he is a big cross-eyed kitty. Anyway, I am the Director of Project Management here at Lewis and Clark.
And so a little bit about Lewis and Clark. We're a small liberal arts college in the Pacific Northwest. We do have a diverse student body and faculty in that we have both an undergraduate school, a law school, and a graduate school of education and counseling. So it's a different mix of people with stages of their lives with different types of questions and needs and interests. And to support all these folks and the faculty, which includes a significant portion of adjunct faculty, we have 27 professional staff and 35 student workers. So next, how did we get here? What are our customer service paths to today? This is Miranda. I started out in retail, Nordstrom, customers always right. And in higher ed, I've been a receptionist, worked in the computer store, been a user support specialist, backing up, second tier for our service desk, and a director.
All right. Julio, my background began in retail, Safeway, or Dominick's or Vons, depending on where you are in the country. In college, I worked as an office admin, a campus tour guide, and then a student IT support specialist. Afterwards, I transitioned into IT training and general second and third tier support. And now in my current role as educational technologist, we do still serve as support for certain things on campus and certain things like our learning management system.
And this is Elizabeth Young, and I started out also in retail, primarily in food service, both at a hot dog stand, but not the one where you have to wear the goofy outfit, and in IHOP, super exciting as a hostess. And then I became a receptionist in college housing, and then was a rental agent for that college housing group, became a campus safety dispatcher, and then finally made the leap to IT as a computer store person, and then became a user support specialist and was in charge of the help desk. And then now I'm the director of project management.
So, why cats? And part of it comes from the herding cats expression, which is defined as a futile attempt to control that which is inherently uncontrollable. And in a lot of ways, that is similar to what we do in IT support, because cats, unlike dogs, are not creatures that are eager to please us necessarily, even though they may enjoy our company and be grateful that we're there for the services we provide them. They're not necessarily there to be trained to do exactly what we want them to do. And you know, our users similarly have their own agenda, and they have things that are important to them. And we generally don't have the expectation that they're going to put our priorities above theirs. I mean, it's understandable that they have things they need to get done, and they'll come to us when they need help. And so...
And they'll potentially eat us when we die.
That was in the notes. Were we talking about the users? Doesn't matter.
Yes.
Anyway, our users, yeah, and they're varied. They're very types, very types of personalities. And again, they all have different motivations. And we just have accepted that there's a certain inherent uncontrollable aspect to doing user support. And once you start there, you have a good place to proceed.
So this section is our addressing of the cast, and you might recognize that from the musical cast, which is based on T.S. Eliot's The Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats. And so we have scattered throughout this both poems, excerpts of the poems about these particular cats that we have chosen as our archetype from Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats. And we are using images of the original costume designs by John Napier to do some pretty fun illustrations of our cats. But I tell you, a cat needs a name that's particular, a name that's peculiar and more dignified. Else how can he keep up his tail perpendicular, or spread out his whiskers, or cherish his pride?
And so the first cat we will address is Jenny Anydots. So you may recognize Jenny Anydots in your work today or your work in the past, and she may show up in the future. What Jenny Anydots likes to do is she likes to work when everyone else is off. She is your after hours headache. She doesn't do much during the day when your service desk is open, but while everyone else is Netflixing or sleeping, that's when she's active, and that's when she wants your help. And she expects to reach you, and if she doesn't, and you've received 10 emails by 8 a.m., by golly, if you don't get a reply to her by 8:15, there's probably going to be another message.
All right, next up is Growl Tiger. And we all have Growl Tiger, if not a few. Growl Tiger is a mess. His file structure is non-existent, his browser always has more than 30 tabs open, and yet he somehow manages to save half of his documents at the root level of his user directory. And his desktop picture hasn't been visible since 2 months after he bought his laptop. Not only that, but he hasn't done any system updates in at least a year.
Next we have Rum Tum Tugger. And he is the faculty member who does not like the LMS the school has. He prefers WordPerfect to Word, and he has a Dvorak keyboard, making support tricky. Or he wants that particular email program that he used at his last institution, even if it doesn't work with your email program.
Next, we have the power couple, Mungo Jerry and Rumpel Teaser. They feed off each other's energy to make everything more than twice as hard or more complicated than it would be to deal with just one of them. Usually, one is a little more technologically savvy than the other, but makes terrible decisions and recommendations and drags the other down with them.
Deuteronomy is a well-loved staple of the institution who's been around as long as anyone can remember. He's well-meaning and considerate and claims to be eager to learn new technology, but you can tell that he wants nothing more than to be told that he can just use a chalkboard and maybe a film strip projector if he's feeling ambitious.
The great Rumpus Cat waits until the very last minute to finish anything, and then he comes running in a panic, demanding help and access to resources with a fiery passion that is difficult to ignore or deny.
Next is Mr. Mistopheles. He's that one kid who brings an issue so strange and unusual that even your most senior veteran on your technical support staff scratches their head and says, huh, that isn't supposed to happen. And then you find out the rest of the story.
McCavity. The laptop with beer spilled on the keyboard, that was McCavity's roommate. The girl who the network informs you has been hosting a streaming copy of Game of Thrones on her BitTorrent, no, that was McCavity's girlfriend. The student who had a file so large that it stops the printer in the library for 2 hours, no idea, but it was probably related to McCavity somehow.
Gus is a staff member who came from another institution where they not only did things differently, but definitely did them better.
Bustopher Jones. He's a trendsetter. Look at him, he's so snappy. He always has the most cutting-edge gadget, the most expensive laptop, and the most integrated internet of all things. He never waits for you to vet whether the latest Mac OS upgrade will break institutional software, but he expects you to fix it yesterday.
Skibbleshanks is an eager tech adopter. He has 0 messages in his inbox, only 2 aliases on his desktop, and performs all of his updates as soon as you say he can. He is zealous and helpful and eager to be as self-sufficient as possible.
So now we're going to review our cat herding best practices. As T.S. Eliot said, before a cat will condescend to treat you as a trusted friend, some little token of esteem is needed, like a dish of cream. Our cat herding best practices come from a combination of research and combined over 50 years of experience in customer service.
Is that many?
You were old.
Why?
Why?
So the first practice that you can find that will help in all of these different customer service interactions you have is multimodal methods of getting help. So the more opportunities and ways that you have for people to get help, whether it's phone, email, website self-help, chat options, if you have a lot of money in digital assistant apps, if you've got talented students who want to start making AI answer questions. However, as you think about all these different types of help you can offer, there's a couple things to keep in mind. It needs to be reliable for people to depend on it. Self-help that isn't available when people need it isn't going to be used, obviously. Self-help that isn't consistent isn't going to be very useful. And then you want it to be quality, have quality, and you want the results across probably one of the biggest challenges where having open communication between your team can be very essential and helpful, is to make sure you're being consistent in the messages that are being sent out across all of these different channels.
All right, look at that glare. And that's my cat, and most of the time it's easy for me to assume that she is just sitting there glaring at me, angry at me for something. But, however, I have heard that necessarily cats don't smile the same way people do, and the glare can mean a lot of things. It could mean that she's actually happy. It's impossible to tell. But the lesson here is avoid unconscious bias. And the first bit to go with that is, unfortunately, it's impossible to avoid because that's the nature of it. It's unconscious, and it hits us before we even have a chance to jump into our logical and our logical problem-solving mind. And so the first step to do this is simply to be aware of that, is that we're going to have first impressions. They may not be the right ones. They could be the right ones, but they also may not be. But the thing is, we're going to have a bias toward the situation because maybe we've seen it before, the person because we've worked with them before, or maybe the age group that they're in. It's all going to be there, and it's a part of who we are. And the first step is to be aware of it, and also make sure that we are addressing people. And we're not just trying to put it into a box of a problem that we've seen before. You know, the cat knocks over the water, we assume the cat's angry at us, or the cat's bored. I don't know, maybe the cat was trying to drink out of the water glass because we haven't filled its water yet, and it was trying to solve the problem on its own. But really, you know, listen and examine the situation, examine the scenario, and, you know, don't necessarily assume you know the answer in the first few seconds of the problem.
Then we have keeping your attitude fresh. Litter boxes should be kept fresh. Litter boxes should be kept fresh, and so should your attitude. Listen to what your client has to say before offering your solution. I know this is my cat, George, when he was a kitten, super cute. But he would meow, and he wasn't like my other cat. He would meow, not necessarily because he was hungry or because he wanted attention, but he was just meowing to say hello. He's a very verbal cat. And so my assumption when he meowed was to just start to give him some food, which could be why he weighs 20 pounds now. But if I had listened to him and paid attention to his method of communication, then I could have served him better. Let them vent. Many people who come to us need to vent because they have an issue or a problem that they need to express fully. And if you interrupt them with a solution, you are not helping them in the long run. You are stopping them from feeling really heard. And of course, if it becomes abusive, you can stop that in its tracks. But it is important to engage with them using empathy, both internally and externally. People can feel really embarrassed or even stupid if they can't solve a problem. And sometimes sharing a tale of your own past missteps can foster a sense of camaraderie, go a little towards mending the relationship with technology. Also, you should apply humor when it's appropriate. This is one of my problems, obviously, since I'm the person who made the cats will eat you joke. Assessing the state of their mind of a stressed individual is a skill that customer service professionals need to hone. Knowing when to use a joke to ease tensions, as well as when to keep that joke to yourself, no matter how hilarious, is a de-escalation technique worth pursuing. All types of cats can appreciate their needs being met with respect and kindness.
So another technique that's often used side by side with keeping your attitude fresh is focusing on the problem at hand. As Liz mentioned, meow, 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 meow. I mean, I look at this picture of the cat that definitely needs some help and the super proud child. That's my son, Jasper. He was so excited he could hold the cat. And there's a lot going on here. And so one of the things you need to do is it's very easy to immediately say, oh, the problem is the cat's miserable, I need to rescue it. And just jump in and do that. But if you do that, you can sometimes be missing the entire problem or not catching all of the problems. So being sure to listen carefully to what's being said, and someone comes in and their computer can't connect to the internet, it's slow, and they don't have the program they need for their class to do their homework, and then they've got a paper due in 2 hours. Obviously you want to listen to all of that, because if you just jump in and start following the first problem, you're not going to necessarily get to the urgent problem, which is, of course, they've got an assignment due. Well, I think that's the one I think is urgent. But in addressing that urgent problem, you want to make sure that you do work up a plan to address all the problems and have a way that you can follow up with that. Get the urgent problem solved, yet follow up and get everything resolved.
All right, teachable versus tech-able. That's Luca attempting to use the internet, which she's no longer allowed to do. So not every moment is a teachable moment. And I, in the past, have always relied on, give a man a fish and they eat for a day, teach a man to fish and they eat for a lifetime. But I have other colleagues who work in the business sector who have told me things like give a man to fish and they know where to go to get fish, teach a man to fish and you destroy your market. And both are valid, it just depends on the situation. And in terms of a teachable moment, when we are experts in a field and we're user support experts, everything can feel like a teachable moment. We want to step in and we want to say, oh, here's how, here's why that happened, here's the background of where that problem came from, here's what you can do in the future, here's what you should do in order to prevent this from happening. However, as we just discussed with our previous issue, in an emergency, or sometimes depending on your user's level of tech-ableness, that may not be the right moment. And with teachability, that can vary. If someone's frustrated, it's not a teachable moment. If the source of the problem is beyond the skill level or the knowledge level of the user, that may also not be a good teachable moment. And the tech-able moment, the tech ability can be improved over time, but it can take some very small steps. And introducing to, okay, this happened because you weren't able to connect to Wi-Fi because, oh, let's not get into why we have a secure one and why we have a public one and how the login and it all works. Let's just say I can get you going right now. And I'll get you more information. I'll send you more information via email. And we can talk about, how to prevent this problem from happening in the future. But right now, it's important that they need to get connected and get something done. And so being able to distinguish between those moments where you just have to go in and solve the problem, that may be the better thing for your relationship with the user in the long run. And, it's going to be a large part of being a good support professional is differentiating between those two.
So we've talked a lot about consistency, and now I'm going to veer from that path into individualization, because finding ways to help beyond your service catalog is great. Service catalogs are good at generalizations. However, when dealing with individual tasks, few, even if those of the same breed or litter, will want to play with the same toy or have the same favorite food. Having a variety of options to draw on as possible solutions can be essential to creating an excellent customer interaction. Don't force feed your client solutions from the service catalog, or you may find puke all over the library carpet. Don't automatically discount help that may come directly from you or a solution that may involve unsupported software even. Sometimes cats need to be able to explore the neighborhood to be convinced that eating at home is more comfortable and reliable. Don't interact in a way that makes clients unwilling to come home and ask for help in the future.
And all of these techniques that we've discussed you can use them to embrace influence. And one of our recommendations is that, part of the reason we came up with cat herding is don't try and control your clients. You can't control your customer service interactions. Many of us are drawn to this profession because we are problem solvers. And one of the hardest things to do sometimes is to give up that control. Appearance matters, and sure, being professional and consistent, those things are all important. However, as Liz mentioned in the previous technique, we want people to come back. And so going ahead and having a friendly, a kind interaction, not treating people like yet another robot or, just a box to check, with our cookie cutter menu of support, is going to definitely help create a relationship with your community where you can influence their behavior in the future. They're going to be more likely to follow rules if they understand why you have them and you know how to explain them in a way that's going to get buy-in. Because we all like breaking rules, especially rules that seem pointless and we don't understand why we have them. And as you design your customer service interactions, or you're working with your team and you're training them, keep in mind that a lot of what we're designing is for that unicorn, that mythical creature that's beautiful and perfect and never, that's going to do all the right things. They're going to read our emails. They're going to register for classes on time. They're going to use the supported software. However, those are not going to be a lot of the people who end up coming and asking for technical assistance. And so just as you're interacting, always think about how is this an opportunity for me to build influence with this person, and have them walk away with a smile.
Or purring.
Or purr, yes.
So we're going to have a bit of a perfect role-playing activity. Perfect role-playing activity. And in order to participate, we're going to read you some scenarios that are particular to our types of cats. And we are going to display a poll that you'll be able to participate using Poll Everywhere. The information is going to be on the screen in just a sec. And you'll be able to participate via text or via your web browser or your phone if you want to. I'll be sorry. Oh, sorry. Actually, yeah, there's our polling information there. Those are going to be our answers. So, yes, the address is there. You can always join by text as well. And if you are a Poll Everywhere campus and you already have the app, it's going to be even easier. And we will ask you about the scenario. You can respond up to 3 times. So you'll have 3 opportunities. You'll have 3 responses you can give. If you see one is the very best option, you can triple down on that and vote for it 3 times. If you see multiple options you think may be applicable, choose the top 3, and you can then vote for all 3. And we will read the scenario. We'll give you a chance to respond, and then we'll take a look at the responses. And also, we'll keep an eye on the chat window. I think, Liz, will we keep an eye on the chat window?
I will.
Awesome. And so if you do have specific comments, things you want to share, feel free to chime in there as well.
So our first scenario is with Jenny Anydots, and we're reminding you what her characteristics are. So here's what happens. As you are closing your service desk window, it's a minute past closing time, Jenny Anydots shows up in a panic with a computer that won't start and an assignment due in 2 hours. So which of our lovely cat herding techniques, you can pick 3, would you use to help Jenny Anydots?
Give you about 30 seconds.
show the result. There we go.
Seems like everyone's eager to control this situation.
Yes. So yeah, it seems like.
Do you want to read it or?
Oh, so it seems like focus on the problem at hand seems to be the clear winner, along with multimodal methods of getting help and keeping your attitude fresh. Does anyone want to share how they might address this? Yeah, I don't know.
Chat responses?
Yeah.
No.
No, okay. I think that's excellent. I mean, focusing on the problem at hand is definitely something you would need to do in this situation, and then just not getting frustrated. And if you have multimodal, if multimodal methods of getting help that you can then go ahead and connect her with, or coming up with, you know, we don't need to fix your computer, we need to figure out what it is that another way for you to do your assignment, do it quickly.
And keep in mind, these aren't perfect. We aren't giving you the perfect solution. There's not one answer to these. Everyone is different, and depending on your personality and your relationship with the person, the quote-unquote right way of addressing this problem can definitely vary. So.
All right, next up, we have Growl Tiger. So Growl Tiger strides into the IT office. He's hoping that someone will help him find a mission-critical file he just saved last week. He swears he saved it, but he isn't quite sure where. All right.
All right, polling is open. Do we want to show the results right away?
Yeah. Okay. Show results. How would you help Growl Tiger?
Oh, okay. Ooh. I'm imagining there's going to be very few scenarios in which avoiding unconscious bias will be just given the nature of the cat.
So definitely the clear winner here seems to be teachable versus tech-able. So is there, does anyone have a strategy they would want to share for how it would be teachable or teachable moment? Yeah.
And in chat, you can chat to the organizers and panelists, or it looks like there isn't an all option, but
I'm
if you
working
want
on that.
to.
Let me see
Okay,
if I
all
can
right.
figure out how to do
Yeah.
that.
We can keep proceeding in the
Yeah,
meantime.
and we can share. I mean, I think that definitely going ahead and seeing. I suppose I'll move on to the next one. Okay, Rum Tum Tugger. So Rum Tum Tugger, for him, he has a problem with his presentation. Your problem with his presentation is that he insists on using OpenOffice Impress, which your student workers have no experience with. What strategies do you use? Yes. Yeah, definitely. And I'm wondering if by multimodal methods of getting help, people are thinking of Google. Because that was one of, we were thinking of finding ways to help beyond your service catalog, where with unsupported software, you just have to be able to either influence them and show them how to get help beyond what you can provide. And then hopefully just try to convince them in that service interaction somehow that, hey, you know, if you use the stuff that we have available and we know how to use, you will run into these types of problems in the future. All right, so next up, we have Mungo, Jerry, and Rumpelteazer. So you have an appointment with Rumpelteazer to help them with a class project. They explain to you how they started to work on their project with the software that was recommended, or they started to work on their project with the software recommended by their professor. But Mungo Jerry said, no, 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 you should use this other program. It's easier to use, it'll look cooler. However, now Mungo Jerry isn't around and they've run into problems and they need your help to fix them.
It's always fun to see the first one.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the problem in the first place was the multimodal method.
Yes, yes, yes. This is one of the trickier ones where you may, depending on your relationship with the individuals, you may have a definitely a different approach you use. But I mean, obviously, looking for ways to help beyond your catalog and keeping your attitude fresh and focusing on them just accomplishing the assignment. Key. Deuteronomy. While thrilled that the institution has gone Google, Deuteronomy would like your assistance using his dated version, it's like 3 versions back, of Microsoft Outlook with Gmail. All right, what are our strategies here?
And also, how can you have tried using Gmail with Outlook? I mean, I'm assuming it's gotten better.
You can, but it's terrible.
It's not reliable.
We're not solving problems here. We're just telling how what approaches we use.
Yes, 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 yes. Yes, and I noticed that this is someone who we know we can't control, you know, or whatever. I mean, we're not even, we can't even influence. We just have to.
So it looks like there is no way for you to chat with all of us.
Oh, okay.
So we'll stop asking you.
So part of what this is that part of what our goal here is to just get you to think about how you use different techniques when you're having these customer service interactions or when you're training others with them developing their expertise in customer service. And how there's often 2 or 3, there's often usually not just one way of helping people. But often there is maybe 1 or 2 clear techniques that are going to be more effective with a particular type of service interaction than with another type. Okay, the great rumpus cat. This one, I'm prepping you, it's going to be dramatic. The great rumpus cat runs up to your service desk window, cuts in front of the people waiting to check out the equipment, yelling, "It's an emergency." He's got his thesis presentation in 30 minutes, and his roommate spilled beer on his poster. How can you help?
Your roommate, you say?
Your roommate.
Actually, more likely they'd say, "Oh, they spilled something on my keyboard.
right.
I don't know what it was. It was in a can."
Yeah. And definitely keeping your attitude fresh and focusing on the problem at hand. Not all problems are going to be solved. Not every place is going to be equipped to say, "Oh, hey, we can help you print out another copy of your poster." But we can be kind and empathetic and supportive as possible. In some cases, being that friendly staff member who can simply say to the student, you know, "Hey, is there anything I can sometimes, depending on the level of the disaster and the type of disaster, you can even just reach out to the professor and explain what the situation was. But sometimes there's going to be problems that we just can't fix also. And maybe the beer poster can be blotted, and maybe some paper towels are going to be the solution.
It might be non-technical.
Yeah, maybe non-technical. So next up is Mr. Mistopheles. Mr. Mistopheles contacts you directly that he can't install software on his college laptop. He has already gone through 5 back and forth email suggestions from your service desk and reports none of them have fixed his problem. Yeah, I think most of us who've been in customer service for several years have had our Mr. Mistopheles, and so those are the people I always try to remember when I'm trying to avoid unconscious bias, because their problems always sound just impossible, and just suspending that disbelief can be helpful. And then keeping your attitude fresh and where you can teach, do. And sometimes the teaching is to provide feedback back to your service, whoever was having that first part of the customer service interaction, to let them know, hey, you can't always assume that they're doing it wrong. All right. McCavity. McCavity's girlfriend shows up for help getting connected to Wi-Fi. You take a look at her computer and it's running Red Cat Linux. She tells you, oh yeah, my boyfriend said it was better. How do we help the girlfriend?
Yeah.
So again, this is one of those ones that's pretty straightforward, in that there isn't much we can do to help other than just trying to connect with ways beyond what you would normally support. Pretty pretty clear-cut one, and with a McCavity on campus, you'll probably get practice. A good point with that is that those are good opportunities to share those solutions with others, especially if you have like a repeat McCavity.
When you do a very specific solution like that, you'll want to make sure it's documented somewhere so that the student who is not familiar with it comes in, at the very least, they know who to go to, who addressed it last time, who helped fix this problem, because it may not be something that's intuitive, particularly for a student employee.
Now we have Gus. Gus is the staff member who came from another institution. And you, at your institution, are in the middle of planning a long overdue update to your student information system. Gus comes from an institution where they applied that update 3 years ago, and he has lots of feelings about how you guys at your are doing it, and you're doing it wrong, and calls your service desk to complain about some of the testing you are requiring him to do. Yeah.
We actually have a Gus on our staff. In IT, and keeping our attitude fresh is often the best methodology.
Yeah, and these are, yes, I think that we all have been there.
And I think the other challenging thing is there's a chance that Gus could be right.
Yes. That's why avoiding unconscious bias is really important.
Yeah. Well, and having that conversation, the tricky piece can be Gus is acknowledging to Gus, hey, you're right, but hey, there's not actually anything we can do about you're right. Okay, right.
Buster Jones.
Thank you, Buster Jones. This is the name I kept mispronouncing as we practiced. He emails in a panic because he cannot print wirelessly from his smartwatch. And it's urgent.
Vote on that.
If you have a smartwatch, why are you printing? Just read your watch.
Keep your crush, Liam.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
That's what I said internally to myself.
All right. Yes, and teachable versus techable definitely seem to be the favorite choice there. Next up, we have Skimbleshanks. Skimbleshanks is wondering when we intend to activate Google Team Drive on campus. You don't have it on your campus, or we don't. And he's already been using it with his colleagues for planning a national conference and says it is ideal for managing his lab students. Oops.
Oh, we don't have it.
Oh,
here.
Oh, I guess we can use that one.
All right.
There may be another tool available.
Yeah, that's. We were trying to keep our attitude fresh.
I don't know. Maybe we in IT have opinions about that.
Yeah,
It's possible.
yeah. Finding ways to help. Right.
I'm taking a great shot for
Awesome.
Great. So that wraps up our herding of the cats. And so we now have the tools in our toolbox to go ahead and take all of those cats we have on campus, and the goal is to use these best practices. If we're applying them and we're being thoughtful, we will turn them into our friends.
Absolutely. And there's been many times in our history when we have had
somebody who was a feral cat. I'm thinking of one faculty member right now. This is when I was working at Campus Safety, he was our feral cat, and he came in and he would throw money at me to buy his daily parking permit. And he wouldn't even say hello. And so I just started putting in my name and already having, as soon as I saw him walk up, I'd just get his permit and get it ready for him. And I was super friendly and super nice. And he became a friend. He became somebody who actually, I cherished our relationship. I'm one of the few people who would call him by a derivative of his name. And when he retired recently, he expressed to me how much he had valued my input over the years and just how kind to him. And so that was a win. I'm not saying that I didn't inside go, here you go, explicit deleted for the first few times, but then I did find that it was really nice to have somebody. He was coming in and he wasn't even thinking about how rude he was being to me. That wasn't his intent. I was just sort of assuming that. So there are many of these folks who come into you with this, the rumpus cat comes into you with a great problem, and you just have to help them out. And when you do, and when you find those ways to use these methodologies, you can make them go from being the person who installs Red Hat Linux on their spouse's computer to being somebody who comes to you because they recognize that you are also enthusiastic about open source software. So this is really an important thing to talk about, you know, that there's relationships that exist. When you're working on campus, one of the things we all love about working on campus, not only do we have relationships with students for 4 years, but we have relationships with our staff and faculty for 20. Yeah. And so it is our opportunities to use these techniques to go from being seen as a person who offers a service to being someone who is a partner in their decision making is a really wonderful thing.
Yeah, it can be unexpected how these relationships form. I have a faculty member who emails me every time he gets a spam message, or a message he thinks is spam, or a message he thinks is phishing. That's almost the extent of our relationship. Is I just get an email from him, and he says, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And I don't know, it makes me think of a cat that just kind of brings you a gift and
right.
places it in front of you.
Here's your dead mouse.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, that's delightful. I don't know what to do with that. But that became the beginning of the relationship. And I didn't have a relationship with that faculty member at all beforehand. Or it would just be something of, hey, solve these problems. And now we have our phishing emails that we share.
And that faculty member actually helped us to teach last summer at our Faculty Technology Institute.
Oh, yeah.
And it's partly because of those relationships, because he trusts us and we have whatever kind of weird relationship it is, it's a relationship. Yeah. We want to do some contributions right now.
Yeah, these are our contributions. So just calling out all the slides. A lot of the photos are of our own pets, but there are definitely some that we've borrowed from others.
Definitely check out Sarah's scribbles. It's a fantastic comic. She's a wonderful artist.
Yeah.
Unless there's any questions, that wraps us up.
I do not see any questions, and I just want to say thank you so much for this fantastic presentation. Totally enjoyable, even if you're not a cat person, which I'm not. But I get it. And thank you again to everyone who attended. I hope you're able to enjoy some time off this summer, and everybody have a great evening.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Goodbye.